Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koe, Mr Chair, tēnā koutou, te whare paramata, and also greetings to all who have experienced the reality of workplace unsafety. And I'd just like to acknowledge the people that spoke in Parliament last night about their experience, and Bernie Monk said to me, we didn't want memorials and tears, we wanted action. And those words are ringing in my ears because he said this to the Prime Minister of New Zealand and he hasn't had it. And so it was a very powerful moment for me personally to hear that directly from Bernie. I'd also like to acknowledge my friend, who's one of the reasons I came to Parliament, Mr Joe Harawira, who is also in the Parliament at the moment, who has experienced, along with his many, many colleagues around Aotearoa, an incredible experience of workplace lack of safety and is still fighting. And I'm not convinced that this bill, Part 1, will address this, is still fighting for ACC recognition of being poisoned in the workplace. So these people have an amazing experience. I toured the country with them on a tour called People Poisoned Daily in the early 2000s. And they got a designated doctor that they have since lost because government's no longer funding it. So I just want to mihi to Joe today, to Joe Harawira, and say many of us will keep fighting for the fact that workplace safety is not just about large workplaces, it's not just about current issues, it's also about historical unfinished business, and it's not just about the obvious dangers. There are many forms of health and safety that people are unaware of and what might appear to be, on the surface, a safe workplace. But if you're talking about farms, if you're talking about forestry, and you're talking about the timber industry and the mills, people suffered not only from terrible accidents, not only from the refusal of the employer to understand those very obvious risks, but also because they don't always understand the chemicals they're dealing with. And that's what happened to Joe, and that's what happened to his many, many friends and family, because the chemical they were exposed to has intergenerational effects. It has the effect of impacting on the worker, their partner, and their kids intergenerationally. And I have seen the holes in the heart and the lists of miscarriages and the terrible cancers and the diabetes that come when workplaces do not take safety seriously. And I'm not convinced yet that this Tolstoyan novel we have before us is actually going to address what has happened to the sawmill workers of the Bay of Plenty and of Aotearoa. And so I'm not satisfied yet, and neither can they be. I want to go to Part 1, the purpose. Part 1A. Protecting workers and other persons against harm to their health, safety and welfare by eliminating or minimising risk arising from work, which is that presumably means everybody, or from a prescribed high-risk plant, which is obviously going to be debated later. Work doesn't exclude workers in the home. Work doesn't mean not in all forms of agriculture. Work doesn't mean prisoners. Work means work. And a worker is someone who's doing the work, not somebody that you decide isn't actually entitled to protection because they don't fit a category. It's about when people are working. So I'm at a loss to see how anybody can be excluded from this. This is not about one size fits all. That's an incredibly disrespectful way to talk about everybody's right to be included in health and safety. Now, I can't think of anybody in any circumstance at work who should not be protected. Small workplace, less than 20, on the farm, off the farm, large timber mill, small site, everybody's at work. Prisoners work. Everybody works. And this bill does not protect them because you cannot fulfil Part A without a better job of Part B. So, Part B, providing for fair and effective workplace representation, consultation, cooperation and resolution of issues. That cannot be achieved if workers cannot select a health and safety committee, their own representative and all of the other issues that go with that. Because the whole reason that we had Pike River was because Peter Whittle wouldn't listen to the workers. It wasn't a bunch of workers refusing to put on their safety gear. It was methane every day, day after day. Methane, no ladder, methane, a room full of complaints. Read Rebecca McPhee, read the book. Those workers complained every single day that they were at risk, and what happened? A big fat nothing, and they died, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. A big fat nothing, and they died. And what is happening to the sawmill workers is a slow creeping death, and I'm not exaggerating. You talk to them and find out if I'm exaggerating. A slow creeping death because they still can't get recognition of the danger of the chemical to which they were exposed, even though it was banned in 1980. So we've got a lot of work to do, and this bill, unfortunately, for all its merits that we tried to support it, doesn't fully do that. It actually excludes some critical issues, particularly around the issue of protecting workers. Now, I was at the Select Committee one day, and I don't claim to have anything like the knowledge of those people that went right through this, particularly my colleague Denise Roach. But I was there when somebody on the Select Committee said, "Oh, do we have to use the word worker?" And I found that very revealing. I think it symbolised for me the problem, the ideological problem of the government, is that they don't understand that participation is not equity. Participation is not justice. Calling everybody the same thing will not result in protection from tragedy, like Pike River, or if you're a forestry worker on the Napier-Topol Road and you're the one at risk, not your boss, not the contractor, not the shareholder. The reality in the workplace is the most effective way to achieve health and safety is to empower the workers so that they can actually get their issues through collectively so that it can be heard as an issue of mutual responsibility. Because of course it's about mutual responsibility, but you cannot achieve that with power and equity. Two people of unequal power, Mr. Young. And that's the word that no one wants to talk about, is that I've been a worker and I've been an employer, and I know the feeling. I know it because I'm an employer right now in this house with an executive assistant. I have more power than my worker, and therefore there have to be checks and balances. And this is not balanced if the health and safety doesn't allow for the Health and Safety Committee. Because absolutely we need the workers to be able to identify the risks as well as the good employers who already want to do that. But we can't sit by after what's happened in this country, what we've seen these people go through, the people who came to testify yesterday. We can't sit by and say, hey, we're all in this together now. We've had the experience of Pike River and the forestry deaths and the sawmill workers are still dying of the poison, but actually we're all just going to be good now because we've got a bill that says it's all about everybody. I don't think those people who experienced this, who fought, the sawmill workers who fought for more than 20 years to get basic justice about what's happened to them and their families, they're not particularly romantic about legislation. They're not romantic about Parliament. They're not romantic about participation. What they want is justice. And justice requires the law to regulate, to create power equity. And if we're not prepared to do that, we should just say so. Call it something else, but it's not comprehensive health and safety. It's health and safety based on the idea of cooperation when there's power imbalance. And I know that there's many, many details in the bill and there's many alleged checks and balances, but there is not going to be safety for the people that I came to Parliament to represent if we do not improve this bill. And today's the last day. Denise and Roach and others have put up SOPs. These Galloway's put up SOPs. The government's put up 30, but our analysis is they're not really changing things in profoundly. They're basically continuing business as usual. Tweaks are not what's needed. What we're looking for is to hear that shift in the consciousness and hearts of the government. We're waiting for that shift, that aha moment where they get it. They get that it's about equity and that safety comes from making sure that power is balanced. Not balance is balanced. This is not a circus act. This is about balancing power, and then we will get safety. And then we would be delighted to support all the other positive things in that bill. We would be delighted to. But until such time as that is there, we cannot. And we're very disappointed because we were hoping the work overnight by the Māori Party and the SOPs would result in changing some of the fundamentals. Because the families last night talked about coming here for justice. And their stories are simple and painful and cannot be minimised and cannot be overlooked. And so we'll keep standing up for that till the last minute of this bill, because nobody should go to work and experience this kind of creeping or immediate health and safety destruction, the risk. I urge people to go and talk to Joe Harawira.
The Honourable Michael Woodhouse.